Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of Elden Ring Lore Explained. Today, we're going to be going over everyone's favorite giant guy, which really doesn't narrow things down a lot because most of the people in these games are huge, but you know, the big man with the tiny horse, the conqueror of the stars, the Starscourge, General Radahn. For today's episode, I have Typler and Clover here with me.
Hi.
Hello.
So, Radahn is the child of Radagon and Renala. He is one of 3 children, along with Rykard and Ranni. I don't know why, but he gives me middle child vibes. I don't know what it is. So, being the son of both a warrior and a sorcerer, I guess she's technically a witch, Radahn had access to training in both combat, like, you know, traditional sword combat, and also magic. And it seems like the primary school of magic that he went into was that of gravity magic. And it seems like the reason for this was because of his horse. Radahn was given a horse, presumably when he was young, presumably when he was like a kid or something, named Leonard, who was a very scrawny steed. And Radahn absolutely loved this horse, absolutely adored it. But with time, Radahn ended up getting kind of large. Like, really fucking big. The guy's like 30 feet tall or something. He's even giant by the standards of the other demigods. Presumably, this is due to his, ancestry. You know, with Radagon being a descendant of the giants. Because I don't believe in the theory that Radagon was always Marika and that he got his red hair from being cursed by the giants, because that's really stupid as a curse. Ah, you've massacred our entire race. We'll curse you with occasionally being able to turn into a chiseled redhead guy. Oh. Doesn't really make much sense to me. I also don't think it's really directly implied that he had his hair because he was cursed. Like, the way that sentence structure from that item description goes is like, yeah, the giants had red hair, and Radagon was said to hate his red locks. It's like, yeah, what do you think that's implying? That he's descended from the giants. And Radahn seemed to have gotten a lot more of that giant blood than pretty much all of his other relatives. I mean, Renala is also pretty big. She's pretty huge, but she just seems to be the usual variety of really big human. I guess the giant genes that partially skipped a generation, and then Renala being huge, combined to turn Radahn into a literal titan. So, he gets older, puberty hits him like some kind of freight train, and he gets fucking gigantic. But he doesn't want to ride a different horse. Leonard is his horse, and he's going to keep riding it for as long as he can. So, likely because of the resources available to him through being the son of the Carian Queen and the leader of the Raya Lucarian Academy, he's able to go to Celia, the town of sorcery, and he learns gravity magic, specifically from an Alabaster Lord who is one of the Onyx Lords, the stone elf people from the Age Before the Erd Tree. It's interesting that those guys were apparently still kind of doing stuff. I mean, we encounter one of them inside Raya Lucaria, and the Alabaster Lord is in an Everjail behind the Carian Manor. It may actually be the same one that trained Radahn. I have a small theory as to why they would have imprisoned him. Yeah, so I guess that means that the Onyx Lords were kind of hanging out with the Carians. or at least the academy, to some extent. Presumably because they originated from the stars, or they came into being because of a meteorite striking the Earth. So they basically originate from space, in a way, um, and are the oldest practitioners of sorcery that we're aware of. It seems like gravity magic is the oldest type of sorcery, so it would make sense that they would be somewhat connected to the big magic group in the lands between. So Radahn goes to Celia, learns gravity magic. We know he learns rock sling at least. We see him use that against us. That's the meteor spell. Not the one where he becomes the meteor, the one where he summons the big floating rocks that he shoots at you like meteors. I assume that's his version of rock sling. Um, and he's actually a pretty good sorcerer, all things considered. He looks like a giant brute. You wouldn't expect it from him, but it's safe to assume that Radahn was actually pretty intelligent. Dude was rocking the strength int build like you wouldn't believe. Now, eventually, Godfrey is banished from the lands between. Radagon is called upon to be Marika's new consort and is just like, alright, bye Rennala, and leaves. And takes the kids with him for the most part. Seems like Ranni still had the biggest connections with Rennala. Um, she was that one of the stepkids. And naturally Radahn goes with his father and joins what I guess would be like the army of Leyndell. Although Leyndell has its own forces, the Redmane army is specifically the soldiers that serve under Radahn. But, what army is Radahn general of? Who does the general answer to? Presumably the people in Leyndell, obviously. Marika. An interesting thing about Radahn is that he was kind of a fanboy of Godfrey. He thought Godfrey and Sarash were really goddamn cool. Very cool. And he was also a really big fan of his red hair, which is ironic, because, Radagon hated that. The funniest thing about Radahn is not actually the tiny horse, because that's more adorable than anything else. It's that he... Shit, I bumped into my desk. It's that he loved the features of himself that his father hated, and, as far as we can tell, had way more adoration for his new stepmom's ex-husband than his actual dad. I imagine Radagon was kind of annoyed by that. But it's fine, because Radagon's kind of an asshole, so we don't really feel bad for him at all. So he becomes the Red Lion. He gets this lion-style armor that he adorns himself with. And his helmet is constructed in such a way to proudly display his flowing red locks, and as such he becomes the Red Lion General. And he leads the Redmane army in Caelid, which was not always literally hell. As far as I can tell, Caelid was probably just kind of a less civilized, wild forest jungle. Some item descriptions talk about how it was a place that many soldiers had marched through over the years. It seems like the type of place where all of the big badasses went to hang out, because it was kind of a rough place. So, the people that you would have there would be pretty hard-boiled. They'd be pretty veteran soldiers. And naturally, Radahn would lead his armies there from within the Redmane Castle, which, I'm also assuming was there prior to everything going to hell. Now, at some point in the timeline, Radahn starts using gravity magic to hold back the stars. He stops the movements of the constellations, which then halts the fate of the Carrion Royals. Now, this, of course, is a bit in conflict with the motivations of his mom and his sister Rani. So why would he do that? One possible option is it was in service to Marika and the Erd Tree. We know that Rani's fate ultimately usurps Marika and the Age of the Erd Tree and replaces it with the Age of Stars. If Radahn has become more loyal to Marika and the Erd Tree than to the Carians, that would probably be the reason for that. Alternatively, perhaps, though we don't really have much information to suggest this, he may have viewed that fate as perhaps not being the best for them, and as such attempted to stop it, but there's not really much to allude to that. All we know is that he's pretty much stopping interstellar stuff from messing around with the lands between. None of these aliens and shit messing around with things falling out of the sky. So that at the very least seems to be his motivation in it, but we don't know why that's his motivation beyond that. So then the shattering happens. Godwyn dies in the Night of the Black Knives. Marika goes apeshit, shatters the Elden Ring. Then pretty much all of the demigods go grab their own shards of the Elden Ring, grab their own great runes, and then go off to try and do their own things, and fight each other. We don't really know what Radahn was after when this happened. Maybe he just kind of wanted to take over things. Seems to kind of be a case for, it seems to generally be the case for all of the demigods upon stealing the great runes, is that they wanted to rule things in their own way. I would say the only real exceptions to that would be Rennala, who was somehow given the Great Rune by Radahn when he left. Somehow. That would have been way before the Shattering, so, I have no idea how that fits into the timeline. Your guess is as good as mine. Maybe that's evidence for the Radahn was always Marika theory, and that Radahn would have just had access to the Elden Ring because he's Marika. And then decided to pluck that out of the Elden Ring, just like Marika plucked out the Rune of Death. And then, Malenia, who we'll talk about later, of course, because she's the person we're going to be talking about next episode. So everyone starts fighting each other, and Radahn ends up getting into conflict with Malenia and the Clean Rot Knights. There's not really much motivation behind this, they just kind of end up fighting each other, which honestly is really seemingly kind of the reasoning that, all of the fighting happens in the Shattering. It's just everyone just kind of ends up fighting each other. Everyone wants to be in charge, everyone wants to become the new Elden Lord, so they all just end up fighting each other. There's not really much deeper motivation behind that. So they end up fighting in Caelid. Some people refer to it as the Battle of Aeonia, because of the Aeonian Swamp. So these two lock battle in the Wailing Dunes. That seems to be where the actual duel between the two of them happened. Though there was a lot of fighting between the actual soldiers. Sorry, Redmane guys, but the Clean Rot Knights are way stronger than the average Redmane Knights. So they were definitely fucking them up. And then we know that the Clean Rot Knights themselves did fight Radahn. The arrows that he uses are actually the spears that the Clean Rot Knights stabbed into him when they were trying to kill him, which is insanely metal. It also goes to show, once again, how fucking giant Radahn is, and that he can use full-size spears as arrows. It's ridiculous. I imagine the way that battle went, because when we see the actual battle between Malenia and Radahn, they're both in pretty good condition. Like, they don't really have any really clear injuries. I imagine what happened is, for most of the Clean Rot Knights, they tried to fight Radahn, and he did that flurry attack that he does, where he does like a shit ton of horizontal slashes. He turns into like a giant blender. It would have been a giant blender. Like, they would have been getting diced into pieces. He was turning them into a bloody mist. Then he and Malenia fight each other. And ultimately, they stalemate. Which is really kind of the only way you can describe it. Malenia, not willing to lose, unleashes the Scarlet Aeonia, which puts Radahn... it infects Radahn with Scarlet Rot, but also puts her into a slumber, and she ends up having to be carried away by one of the Clean Rot Knights. So neither of them are in a great condition after their fight. Neither of them is able to really stand up victorious over the other. You know, a lot of people, the Radahn stands on the internet, the guys that are attempting to power scale Elden Ring, are like, yeah, but Radahn was holding back the stars the entire time while fighting Malenia. If he weren't doing that, he would have beaten her. And maybe. I don't know. It's also clear that Malenia was not at full power during the fight, because she only released the Scarlet Aeonia at the end, and I don't know if that would have turned her into the Goddess of Rot then, or if that did not happen until the time when we fight her. I think it's probably the latter, more so. But this battle ends up achieving nothing. Radahn, and pretty much the entirety of Caelid, are infected with the Scarlet Rot. And because of this, Radahn loses his mind. The Scarlet Rot eats away at him from within, and he ends up aimlessly wandering the Wailing Dunes forever, gathering the corpses of former friend and foe alike, gorging on them like a dog, and howling at the sky. And at some point he cuts his feet off. Presumably this is because they were rotting away, and he went insane. You see there's like gravity magic on the nubs, so presumably that's where he's making himself lighter, so that he doesn't crush Leonard. I've heard at least one person say... Actually, no. I was watching Plague of Grapes playthrough, and he seems to not like Radahn that much because of the condition that Leonard is in. He doesn't buy into the whole wholesome guy loves his tiny horse thing because Leonard is in hell right now. However, Radahn is literally insane. He has literally lost his mind. He has become an animal. But, even despite all that, he doesn't eat Leonard. Wouldn't even think about eating his horse. So, the Redmane soldiers who are left decide to host the Radon Festival. Oh god, my audio is repeating in someone's mic. It's not doing it anymore, thank god. That was awkward. In which they want to allow for Radahn to experience a warrior's death. So he doesn't have to rot away slowly over time, you know, progressively degrading and getting worse, or kill himself, which is generally considered pretty dishonorable. So Radahn was a very cool guy, and he inspired a very cool guy culture within his soldiers. They were bros. They were a bunch of very fine dudes, and you have to give them a lot of credit for that. So yeah, that's pretty much Radahn. There's actually not a ton of information on him. Unlike some other characters, we know that he's supposedly the mightiest of the demigods, or was. It was a competition between him and Malenia. He loved his tiny horse, he learned gravity magic so he could ride his horse, and he went crazy after being infected with Scarlet Rot after fighting Malenia. Oh, and he's holding back the stars, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much all the Radahn lore. He's a pretty simple guy. Really, not that much to him, but it does kind of go to show that you don't need to have, like, several pages worth of information on a character for them to be really good. Because, I mean, you're here. You know. Everybody loves Radahn. We all love Radahn. Don't you guys love Radahn?
Yeah, he's
Um,
cool.
I'm one of the Radon stands.
Yeah.
I'm biased.
Are you one of those dudes that power scales and says, well, if he didn't have to hold back the stars, he probably would have beaten Melania?
Well, I'm of the opinion that yeah, no, he held back the stars, which is like several gravitational, like many tons of weight.
Yeah, we should
Stars
also
in this universe don't
specify.
make any don't
Yeah, it
make
seems
any
like the
sense. By the way,
stars are actually like meteorites. They're not like. He's not holding back the force of suns light years away from the planet. He's
Wait,
holding
what
back a
was
bunch
the
of
reason
glintstone
as to
meteors.
what was the reason as to why he was holding back the stars?
We don't know, but it was preventing the fate of the Carrion Royals from coming into being. It's not clear why he would do that.
I
Okay.
partly think it was to avoid a clasmic
A
clasmatic event.
cataclysmic.
Cataclysmic event. See, you see thousands of stars after you beat Radon, right? Thousands of stars,
Yeah.
scoring across the sky. We're only in the lands between. We have no idea the state of everything outside of that.
Yeah. That's true. Well, because part of Ronnie's questline is they talk about how Radahn is the one halting the fate of the Carians, and it just so happens that one of the meteors that's freed upon us killing him opens up the path to Nokron, which you need to find in order to do Ronnie's questline.
Mhm.
So it does seem to be a bunch of fate and destiny bullshit.
Um, Also, one more thing about Melania.
Uh huh.
Um, she had to release the the rot flower. I forgot what it
The
was called.
Scarlet Aeonia.
The Scarlet Animals. If she releases it three times she becomes the rot goddess.
Yeah, so I don't think she became the goddess of Rot during her fight with Radahn. So she actually did not reach her true power during that fight. I'm pretty sure during her fight with Radahn that was the second bloom of the Scarlet Aeonia.
Yeah. It's also said that the use of it makes her own scarlet rot progress.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit in the next episode, which will be about Melania. So if you're looking forward to that, definitely be sure to subscribe. And that's pretty much all for today's video. So, once again, if you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any episode of Elden Ring Lore Explained. We upload these on Tuesdays and Saturdays, maybe the occasional Friday, depending on what's going on. Next episode, we will be talking about the Blade of Mikola, Melania the Severed. So be sure to keep your eyes out for when that comes out. I mean, you know when it comes out. Pretty much always comes out at noon. So, 12 o'clock EST on Saturday. Look forward to that. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.